that was quite dramatic. This is the best loadout for Demoman. Thanks for watching. Oh wait, no, yeah, actually the pan, because it makes a funny noise and stuff, so yeah. This is the first episode in a new series where I propose to you what I think is the best loadout for a class, and then I try to justify to you my choice. I'm hoping this could be useful for new players or people trying new classes, and I know that I've certainly learned loads already as I've started to collect your feedback and plan out these episodes. I've always wondered, how often is stock the best option, and how often do unlocks actually become meta? So as we go through each of the classes, I think this will be a really interesting series. The best thing about this series though is that I don't think anyone's going to disagree with what I'm going to say, because it's not like it's subjective. Yeah, I can't imagine there being any debate or arguments in the comment section at all, which is always nice. Okay, so just to clarify, when we say best, this is what I'm looking for. The best loadout in most situations. A solid, reliable, all-rounder loadout. Or, another way I like to think about it is, what would you choose if you could only pick one loadout for the rest of your life? So let's start this episode with the official Demoman weapon tier list provided by the National Institute Centre Database Headquarters of TF2 Tier Listings Limited trademark. Based on this official document, the Demoman has a fair few S tier weapons to choose from. I've excluded Demonite for this episode to make things simpler, but perhaps we'll take a look at him in the future. So let's start with his melee weapons. Now the Eyelander, the Claymore, and the Persian Persuader all have shield reliant stats. The moment you see this, it usually means that it's likely not going to be ideal for use as a classic Demoman, because you're simply going to be losing out on some of those perks. So that leaves us with the Pain Train, the Scotsman Skullcutter, and the Caber. And I'm going to throw in the Half Satoichi too, as I kind of have a soft spot for it. Now the Pain Train is pretty good, to be fair, as it allows you to cap objectives at double the speed. But that 10% vulnerability from bullets, although may not seem like much, has a pretty big impact, and that's simply because this is a constant downside. Every single moment of every single fight, you are slightly more vulnerable to bullet damage, and this soon adds up. Over the course of a game, it may well lead to a couple of deaths where you wouldn't have died normally. Plus, Scout is of course a pretty decent counter to Demoman, so this makes him even more deadly, which is not something I like the idea of. Now the Scotsman Skullcutter is also a pretty good option. I love the simplicity of just swapping speed for damage, but for me, often when you are in a melee situation, speed is more of a priority at that given moment, because more often than not, it's just a matter of hitting that enemy one last time before they're able to get another shot out onto you. As well as this, if you're playing in casual servers anyway, then every other swing grants a crit, so damage isn't really that much of an issue. As for the Half Satoichi, I've always liked this weapon and I often use it when playing Demonite, but much like the other Demonite weapons, this is just so much better when you have a shield and boots equipped. This is because two of its most impactful downsides are completely negated when you are indeed a Demonite: the 75% slower deploy speed and the holster penalty. And to make things worse, if I was to use this weapon, I couldn't go around doing this, which is extremely important to me. Oh, and the Caber is a meme. Boomstick goes boom, lol. So with all this in mind, for me the strongest melee weapon for Demoman has got to be the good old stock bottle, and when I say bottle, I obviously mean pan. I think there is a pretty solid consensus in the community on the stock being the best melee option for demo, but I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. But next up, let's take a look at the demo's primary weapon. A lot of people have been asking me recently about the Iron Bomber, and I think it's almost the perfect side grade to stock. But for a couple of reasons, I think it may well just be slightly better. Firstly, of course, we have the hitbox bug. Getting direct hits with this thing is slightly easier. It's a pretty subtle difference, as demonstrated by Zesty in a video he made quite recently, but over a long period of time, this will inevitably result in you hitting more grenades and doing more damage. It would be very difficult to measure that difference and the impact of this bug, but let's say it was just a couple of shots per game. Not a huge deal, but this certainly could be the difference between winning and losing a fight in some situations. But that aside, even if this bug didn't exist, I would still use the Iron Bomber, and that is for one reason alone: the grenades don't roll. This means that when you miss, you don't miss. Not that I would know anything about missing, it's just something I heard my friends talking about once or something. Having the grenade stay on the ground next to your target and deal damage is incredibly useful, and this mechanic also allows you to be more effective when shooting onto high ground and ledges too. In my opinion, the only real time the stock is better is perhaps when firing into a corner, so you get that same effect as the Iron Bomber, as the grenades aren't able to roll too far away, or when firing at a group of enemies who are close together, and by hitting one you can deal a ton of splash damage to the entire group, which can be very powerful. There are a few other scenarios where rollers can be quite useful or beneficial, but they're pretty few and far between, and I think in most cases the Iron Bomber does a better job. It's also reassuring to see that pretty much every high level demo player uses the Iron Bomber, and if anyone's going to know what's more effective, it's these guys. The other primaries are not really contenders in my opinion. One less shot from the lock and load is just too much of a sacrifice for it to be the ultimate primary, although of course it's amazing at taking out sentry guns. And the loose cannon, although super fun and powerful in certain situations, just lacks that reliability and the more immediate damage output that you can get from a grenade launcher. If there's a scout in your face, you can apply 100 damage instantly with a grenade launcher, but the loose cannon, it's either 30 to 40 damage, or you can wait to time the charge just right to get that double donk, by which time, if that scout's any good, you're already dead. I think the loose cannon can be great for defending chokes and objectives when you have good control of the distance between you and the enemies, but overall it's not as reliable as the grenade launchers. Last but not least, the demo's secondary, or should I say the secondary primary, because as we know, Valve accidentally gave the Demoman 2 primary weapons. There are 4 options here, and some of these we can go through quite quickly. The Scottish Resistance is not very versatile, great in certain very specific situations, but at other times it's rendered practically useless. Okay, so what about stock and the Quickie Bomb launcher? This is probably one of the most difficult questions when it comes to choosing a loadout for the Demoman. These are both great weapons. One has more potential when it comes to traps and sustain in a fight, but the other has the advantage of speed and dealing more damage at range, and you could debate dealing more damage in general. The Quickie Bomb launcher really is amazing and quite possibly better than stock, but for some reason I don't use it. I think it's because I find I'm permanently reloading. It's hard to describe, but I don't think this weapon has a great flow, but it might be something I just simply have to get used to. After all, I've been using the Sticky Bomb launcher for a long time. I did an experiment a while back where I compared the damage output of both of these weapons, and although I didn't have a huge amount of data and the results were quite close, it did suggest that I was being more effective with the Quickie Bomb launcher. So it is a real tricky one, and I would say that at the very least the Quickie Bomb launcher is a side grade, but it's quite possible that it's even better than stock. And so with all this in mind, for the demo secondary, I use the Sticky Jumper. What? That's right, in the majority of my games I use the Sticky Jumper. For 2 reasons: it's fun and it's more interesting to watch. But if I am going try hard, then the Sticky Spam is certainly coming out. And if I was to choose a loadout for the rest of my time, it would have to be the good old fashioned stock Sticky Bomb launcher. So yeah, this is the best loadout for Demoman. What do you think? Do you agree? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know what class you want to see next. Scout maybe? He has so many good pistols. It's going to be real hard. For some classes like Medic and Soldier, I think this will be a fairly easy exercise, but for others it's going to be really interesting and almost impossible to narrow down to just one loadout. And at the end of the day, sometimes it will be subjective, but for this episode at least, I'm pretty confident we did a pretty good job. Thank you guys for watching, thank you for your support on Patreon, on Twitch, and for leaving a like and for commenting. I really appreciate it. I love you all very much, and I'll see you guys in the next one.